Kia ora, Wendy. Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Your Way podcast today. I am really looking forward to our conversation, which will probably get into the intersectionality of women's health, aging, and running a business. So to get us started, I'd love to hand the mic over to you and get yourself introduced to our listeners, who you are, what you do in your business, and how you make your moolah.
Well, kia ora koutou, everybody. Thank you for being here with me. And Sandra, thank you for such an interesting invitation. It's something I often get asked to talk about, menopause per se, or women's aging. And it's really fantastic to be able to talk about the business to your business entrepreneurs, because that's such a big part of my own journey over the past 10 years. I'm Dr. Wendy Sweet from New Zealand, and I'm beaming at you from a tiny little town called Wanaka in the South Island of New Zealand. Some of you may have been there. And this is where I run my business, here in my study. My business evolved just over a decade ago now, when I came out of my PhD. And I came out of my PhD with a doctorate in women's health and aging. But that was kind of just one component of who I am. And over my entire career, I have done intensive care nursing. I set up personal training for Les Mills. You may have heard of Les Mills, the fitness global giant. And then I ended up in academia for the last 20 years at the University of Waikato in the North Island. And it was through those years that I started to think about my future. I did my master's degree in lifestyle behavior change, but I had all these other skills and not so much skills, but knowledge. And I came out of my doctoral studies, the university was restructuring, and I had been up in America at a women's health and aging conference. I was doing a presentation on my doctoral studies, and I had been involved in the education side of things in New Zealand for many years, certainly around health, exercise, nutrition, all of those kind of lifestyle things. And over the time that I was doing my doctorate, whereby I had been interviewing women between the ages of 50 and 60 years, they were telling me a lot of stories about their struggles and about what they were up to, and all sorts of things. And I went up to America to a health and aging conference, and I heard a presentation from a fitness industry expert. She was the head of Curves International, a women's health chain, and she was overseeing 10,000 health clubs between America and Canada. And she said a really interesting thing that sat with me the entire, flight home across the Pacific. And that was, I don't know what's happening, but we're seeing a lot of women between the ages of 50 and 55 who are joining the gym. And then she paused and she said, but they're the first demographic to leave. And I thought, wow, I'm seeing the same thing in New Zealand. I'm hearing the same thing from my subjects whom I was interviewing throughout the country. And I had been to Australia. I'd been presenting at the World Health Organization conference on health and aging. And Professor Wendy Brown and her team have run the Australian longitudinal women's health studies for 30 years, were also saying the same. And they said, I don't know what's going on, but women between the ages of 50 and 55 are the demographic to get out of physical activity. And I thought, gosh, this is really powerful, because my lady, and she said, but we don't know why. And I went, I know why. It's because they're not sleeping. They're exhausted. They've got so much going on in their lives. They've got sore joints. They've got hot flushes or hot flashes that aren't, that they're being given HRT and antidepressants and everything, but they are busy, stressed women who have got careers, who are managing the home, managing aging parents and all these things. So it was during those years that I decided that I needed to do something about it. And I've taught physiology for a number of years. So I decided to unpack the lifestyle solutions, the evidenced lifestyle solutions for women between the ages of 45 and 60, so those midlife years, we're in those middle years, which is defined by the life expectancy of the country you live in. And I did something about it. I really unpacked our sleep, our hot flushes, and put them up against evidenced lifestyle solutions, because this, menopause, the menopause transition has a very biomedical focus and a pharmaceutical focus. I can't do anything about that. That's between a woman and her doctor. But yet I knew all these practitioners, personal trainers, nutritionists, physiotherapists that were seeing all these problems but didn't know the answers, and certainly for women themselves. So that's what I do. That's how I get my moolah. I designed programs, a 12-week program for women. Initially, I had one program called Circuit Breaker to break the circuit of symptoms through lifestyle solutions. I now, 2 years into that, I realized that that weight loss was a huge issue, literally, for many, many women, and many women were entering menopause overweight and therefore struggling a lot more than thinner and leaner women who do well on HRT. But the larger ladies, they have their own struggles. So I've now got a weight loss program, and I've now, just last year, we're going to get into this conversation, but I'm always thinking ahead. I'm in my mid-60s now, and now I've got a Beyond Menopause program because, of course, over the last 10 years since I've been pioneering this area, the competition is, not so much the competition, but perimenopause and menopause has become a very, a lot more information about it. And so I've now got a Beyond Menopause program. I also have evolved a practitioner program that sells out within 24 hours. And that's my passion, is still with my woman's education hat on, because that's how I think of myself. So there we go. That's it.
What a beautiful journey. What a beautiful journey, Wendy. Seeing that need in the community, but also knowing that the relationship between the doctor and woman still needed to exist, but there was this gap that still existed. Definitely my experience is that menopause is being talked about so much more now than ever before. I mean, when I think about the perimenopause phase for myself, I thought that I was just drinking too much coffee or consuming too much sugar or not getting enough sleep, or I was stressed. And it was probably a combination of all of those, but I didn't realize that perimenopause was a thing until I was in menopause, so it's, and I think it was just because of the amount of information now available to us and the conversations that we're now having amongst women of our age is so much more than probably ever before. So I thank you for doing the work that you do, because now we can all be informed and make smarter choices at this phase of life.
Well, I think what happened with what my realization, Sandra, was that everything is being looked at in isolation. You go to your doctor, and the HRT is only evidenced for hot flushes or hot flashes, anxiety, and maybe sleep. But there's all these other things: gut health, joint health, weight gain, all these other things that are going on with women. And it's even, nobody was integrating the information. Nobody was taking a holistic whole body view. Even now we've got, wonderful work by Dr. Stacey Sims about heavy weight training, but that's only looking at bone density and maybe
Yep.
muscle hypertrophy. And then you've got, Dr. Mindy Peltz, who's on YouTube and talking about fasting. Well, that's only one aspect of it. What about our sleep? What about our stress? What about, all of these other things that make up women's health? And my perspective was always, understanding that menopause is a stepping stone. Yes, it goes on for 8 to 10 years. So sorry to your listeners if they didn't know that, but your symptoms will continue if you don't deal with the inflammation and if you don't deal with all these other things that are occurring around the body due to aging. And that was my big light bulb moment, was the fact that at 50 years old in academia, we're called older women. We are known as older women, and yet our brains are still 35. We don't think of ourselves as older women. But you think about it, inside, our bodies are aging and changing, and that's not just about the hormones, but all of this information that's come out over the past 10 years is really centered on hormones. It's not, and ovarian hormones and pituitary hormones. It's not centered on the thyroid and the adrenal and all these other changes that are going on around the body, especially when women have a lot of stress in their lives.
And so how long ago did you start your first program? Like, going through all of your research and your PhD, when did you actually then go, I'm going to take this and I'm going to start a business and create a program and start working with women inside of, an online program?
Well, as many of your listeners know, it's not just a kind of a one, thought wonder. It evolved, and I knew that the university was restructuring. I knew that they were heading more into sport and exercise science, and yet my PhD was on women's health and aging. I knew that I want to go back to one-on-one consultations, because, as many of your listeners will know, that can be tricky. Was very blessed in that my son, not that I thought about this at the time, but my son was a competitive skier. I was in the university system, so I was able to take him up to America. And I lived in Colorado from December right through till February. My husband and daughter would come up and visit. But it was during that time I was finishing off my PhD. And because I was in America, the growth of coaching was really, starting off. We're talking 12, 13, 14 years ago. And so I thought to myself, wow, this is really fascinating that these coaches that I'm seeing around lifestyle, around aging, prominent people who we've heard of over many years, they were now doing running online businesses. So that was my first kind of insight into, wow, what if I could not think locally, but think globally? What would this look like? And because I had a background in personal training and education, and certainly in lifestyle and health behavior change, and I also had been writing a lot of resources for many universities and polytechs in New Zealand over the years. So I knew about designing modules. I knew about the education things, and I knew about how women learn, how people learn, and what they want to hear. And I certainly had the background to be able to put the content in there. So when I started thinking about what I wanted to do for my next phase of my career, when I finished my PhD, I was in my early 50s. And I thought, right, what do I want to step into? And I knew it was this beautiful opportunity to bring all of my knowledge together. And that's what I kept thinking to myself. How do I sell my knowledge? It wasn't about what I knew. It was about, how do I sell my knowledge? So that's when I started understanding that there was a lot going on in America and around coaching. And then I was able to talk to a website designer, and he said, well, are you going to do Zoom calls? And I went, no. This is an online program. Women are so busy. I want them to do it in their own time. I want them to have a 12-week program that they do in their own time, but I want to create community, because I knew community was imperative to support, to women staying motivated, and for me to be able to problem solve. And that's really important, is whoever we are as thought leaders, business leaders, coaches, whatever we are, our role is to problem solve, because we want the outcome. We want women to get whatever outcome they are trying to achieve. And certainly from a coaching perspective, and I knew from 30 years of the personal training industry, once you start to get results, it's about word of mouth. So I found my husband and I found a web developer. Fortunately, they were in the North Island of New Zealand, and they enabled me to see that I could have this member area behind the paywall hidden. And if women want to get hold of me and talk to me, they need to buy my program, and they'll get me behind that paywall. But I think what preceded that was really starting to think about my future and what I wanted. And it was really because I wanted to be flexible with my time. And I think that that's what having an online business has given me, is choice and flexibility. I go up to Switzerland every year. We're a family of skiers, and my son has competed over there many years. And my business is my laptop. So that's, once we start to think about what do we want, it can be about us. Don't be afraid to make it about you. What do you want to achieve in 5 years and in 10 years? And where do you want to be? And I knew that at 55, no one else would want me. I had to be my own boss. So I needed to be, by 65, 70, I want to be in this online space. And I think the turning point came for me, Sandra, was I have been a big part of the New Zealand health and fitness industry. And I've always presented at conferences. I've traveled the world presenting at conferences. And for the first time in 30 years, I got an invitation to present at an Australian conference. And I realized that it was on exactly the same weekend as a digital marketing conference down on the Gold Coast. And so I was really torn, because I love presenting at conferences. It's what I do. But part of setting up a business and being entrepreneurial and forging your way ahead is saying, what knowledge don't I have, but I need? And so that's a question that I want your listeners to really think about. What is the knowledge that you don't have? We're all experts in our own areas, and I'm an expert in all of these areas. However, there's a lot that I don't know, particularly when you're stepping out of your comfort zone and you want to do online coaching, as I did. So I went to the Gold Coast instead, dragged hubby along, and honestly, it was like a foreign language at the time, but it gave me this amazing insight into what was going on in this world of online coaching. Doesn't matter what you're coaching, but what's going on in that world. How do you sell, a black box, which is your program, which is behind the paywall? How do you sell yourself when nobody, maybe there's people in New Zealand who know who I am, but certainly I wanted to have a presence in the UK and Australia and Canada and America. So how do you do that? So that was a turning point, was stepping away from what I felt familiar and comfortable with and what I needed to know to be able to get to where I wanted to get.
Sounds like you had a really clear picture ahead. What I'm interested in is, 10 years ago, you would have been, I want to say, in the middle of the menopause journey, starting a new business. How did that influence the way that you set up your business, ran your business? Like, I know you just said to me, you really thought through around what you wanted to do in your business, and that was very intentional, that you wanted to be able to travel, be with your
Mm.
family, be on the ski slopes, and still have a business at this stage of life. But going through that menopause phase at the same time, did did, did that influence how you were thinking about setting up your business?
Absolutely, because I had struggled as well, and it
Mhm.
was the another turning point for me. And I talk about it if your listeners are interested in my journey. The masterclass on menopause on the My Menopause Transformation website is there, and I tell a story about attending a conference in Australia. I was 15 to 20 kilos heavier than what I am now. I could hardly walk from my hotel to the conference centre because I had plantar fasciitis, my knees were sore, aching, I wasn't sleeping. And it was at that conference that I learned so much about not menopause per se, but inflammation and health and
Mm,
aging. And I came away from that 3-day conference going, this is phenomenal. Why don't women know this stuff? Why aren't we being told this stuff? And I just knew that there was this wonderful kind of broadening of academia. And that's what I did. I set off on my own journey, and it really was my personal journey to certainly tackle the weight gain. I was the heaviest that
mm,
I'd been in all my life. I was exercising daily, following whatever nutrition was around at the time, and really not understanding menopause. So the first thing I did, even before I developed my own business, the first thing I did was sort out my own health, and that's what drove me. That's I lost 15 kilos. I started to understand what is menopause, and that knowledge is the key. If you've got
mm,
listeners who are going through menopause, and you yourself, you have to understand what it is. It's not just about what you're hearing. Take HRT, take antidepressants. You have to understand what it is in your life course, and what it is. It's this period of time, excuse the pun,
mm,
where we're going into ovarian decline, ovarian aging. Our
mm,
reproductive years are ending, no matter if women have had children, if they haven't had children, if they can't
mm,
have children, if they don't want children. That is immaterial. Our biology is changing, and we're stepping into the next phase of our life, which is our post-menopause years. And we've all seen our mother's generation, with a lot of health problems. And
mm,
therefore, menopause is the time of our lives where we have to make some lifestyle changes. So that was the first thing, was that I didn't write any modules. I didn't even conceptualize my business until I sorted out my own health. And that's when I thought, I need women to know this. They're not being told this. They go to their doctor, they
mm,
get a prescription for HRT. Who's talking to them about their stress? Who's even understanding what they do? Does
yeah,
anyone's doctors say to you, oh, what do you do for a job? Or what are you doing for
mm,
exercise? And I could see this, there was this huge gap between what doctors were understanding and talking about with women, and certainly from the exercise side of things. We're the first generation, women in their early 60s today, we're the first generation to come into menopause with with regard to the changing physical landscape, with regard to the changing nutrition landscape, and with regard to the emphasis on body image, which we get a bit torn with. So there's all these things that I was understanding, thinking about, and I was still working at the university, but then starting to think, well, what is the knowledge that women need? And you've always got to have a framework for whatever it is you're selling, particularly if you're selling, education or coaching. You've got to have a conceptual framework. Mine was always, I needed to position the menopause transition in women's health and aging. That was my PhD. And there are 7 dimensions to women's health and aging. So that's what enabled me to think about content. And I needed to write the content, and then I needed to, a 12-week program. I needed to think about, well, I want that delivered. I wanted that delivered via email. So I needed a system that was able to deliver, that women could sign up, all that kind of thing. So there was a lot going on, but the very first thing was, what do you want your website to do? What does it say? And what do you want it to do? And that was very clear to me, that what I needed it to do was to get engagement and certainly get a database. So the very first thing I did, along with my web developer, was I designed a menopause symptoms quiz, because when women land on a website, I wanted their email, because I didn't know who they were. They don't know me through a bar of soap. Yeah. And so if your listeners are thinking about, well, how do I start my business and how do I get started? You have to think through everything. You have to go through that whole pathway. What is the customer journey? What are they on? What journey are they on? And for me, it was about, the very first thing was about familiarization. And that is, they need to know who I am. They need to know what is it I'm selling them. And we all know that there are no women on the planet who will, in their 50s, who will part with their money if they don't know, like, and trust you. Does that make sense? So my journey, I have women sitting on my newsletter. I have a weekly newsletter. I started that right at the start. Give me your email through the symptoms quiz, and I'll put you on my newsletter. That's all I did. So there was no fear. And then I've got women even now who buy my program. They got on my website at 45 years old. They're on the HRT. They're on the everything you can, whatever. And now they're 53 and they're going, actually, my symptoms haven't gone away. They've come back because they haven't changed their lifestyle. I'm a last resort for women these days in the menopause game, because every single woman thinks that HRT is the panacea, and it is for their brain fog and memory and hot flushes. But what happens when their joints are sore? What happens when they start putting on weight? What happens when they're not sleeping? What happens at 55 when suddenly all their symptoms come back? And that's more to do with cardiac health. So I have a number of things that I do, but your listeners who are setting up their business, they have to really think about, it's not about what you're selling, it's how do you get to the point where you are selling something.
Yeah, I want to take us for a moment over to those women who are trying to push through. So they've been to the doctor, they maybe have got themselves on some HRT, or they've got some medical intervention that is meant to deal with the menopause, perimenopause that they're experiencing. But in the meantime, they're still trying to push through the fatigue, push through the hormonal shifts in their body. What kind of advice would you want to give them? Because I know you just said before, you are the last call for these women when they are getting, they feel desperate that nothing is working that they've tried, because they've gone down the medical intervention route. So what's some practical advice that we can share with them to give them that sense of it's an and.
Well, the first thing I would say is you're not alone. There are so many women, so don't ever think that even if you're struggling and you've been to your doctor, which is the first port of call if you're really struggling with symptoms, but it's and I just want women to, the listeners, to really think about their own situation. What are you doing in your day? You just think about the enormity of everything that you're doing. You may be setting up a business or already in business. So you've got that going on. You may have, your family that you're caring for. You may have a lot of meetings and all of these other things that you're doing. You may be trying to manage your own health and exercising. So there's all these things that you are doing that are impacting on your energy levels and your exhaustion. So and if you're not sleeping, it's worse. It all kind of builds up. So the first hint is, the strategy. Well, my first words to you are, as I said, you're not alone. There's millions of women on the planet who are like you. So do what you need to do with your doctor to help you get through the menopause transition while you are in a really busy phase of your life, because it is busy. We are way busier than our mother's generation. But also remember that menopause, if you've got a lot of symptoms and you're struggling and you're not sleeping, then you need to put some strategies in place. The first thing I would do is say, find out why your symptoms are occurring. They're so bad. I get women to, if your vitamin D is low, if your iron and B12 are low, you will get worse hot flushes and worse memory problems. So that's what I teach women. If you aren't sleeping, then you need to reset your circadian rhythm. And I've specifically researched that specific to menopause and our generation. So those are practical things that you can be doing. The other thing that you can be doing is understanding that your whole body works on the circadian rhythm. So you need to find ways to think about how you're pacing yourself during the day and what you're doing during the day in terms of the hours that you're doing working or whatever, because you've got to have some time for yourself. You've got to get up every single morning, and if you're not taking the kids to school or running to meetings, then you need some time for yourself, at least 3 mornings a week. You need to get outside, no sunglasses, get the sun in your eyes, and reset your circadian rhythm. That is the single most thing that women can be doing. And of course, we come through our 30s and 40s, and I've been busy and everything, and we just don't have that time to ourselves. So there's practical things that I teach women to start to modify and adjust their day. When are you turning off your computer? When are you turning off your phone? All of those things at the end of the day impact your energy levels the next day. And this is the challenge for women who are entrepreneurs and running their business. And I was the same. I was doing my PhD when I was coming through menopause and then setting up a business. And of course, we all know about working till midnight when the house is quiet. So if you are going to work to midnight, don't do that every single night, maybe 1 or 2 nights. So start to put some time restrictions on there. And then the other thing is, and I'm very passionate about this because I've been through it myself, recognize what's keeping you from doing what you love to do. And what I mean by that, Sandra, is we are setting ourselves up in business because that's our passion. That's what we want to do. It's what we love to do. Yet, because of modern society, there's all these other things that are going on in our lives. So what support do you need in the home, outside the home, to enable you to spend time on your business and really starting to think it through. And one of the first, we all know that in New Zealand, we all think of ourselves as martyrs, and we all, end up doing everything, and we're stoic about it because that's our mother's generation.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I really want to do this. I want to give it a good go. I've got to spend some hours. I'm taking the kids to swimming and rugby. My kids were teenagers when I was doing all this. And I was still, I was living in a big city and having to drive them to various things. Plus I was working at the university but starting to write some content and think about what I wanted to do. And I thought to myself, you know what? I need a housekeeper. This is ridiculous. I need a housekeeper. And I say, well, I know that sounds a bit strange for a woman who already have a housekeeper. And now I will never, I have a housekeeper every week, and she's 30 and I'm 65 and I've got a big house. And so I had to step away from my beliefs.
Yeah.
And my beliefs were that I was a capable, independent superwoman who could do everything. And my husband was running he still runs businesses in the North Island. So he was out the door at 7:30 and home at 7 o'clock at night. So couldn't rely on him to do the housework, let alone cook. And so those little things, I mean, they're not little because they impact our ability to do our job. So that was number one. Number two, when I went to this digital marketing conference in Australia, I found the wonderful Sonia Keenan, who's a business coach. And you're a business coach, Sandra. I'm a woman's health coach. Find a coach, because we all know that to stay motivated and accountable, we need to be able to talk things through. So that's the second thing. Find a housekeeper, find a coach. And if I had my way these days, I would have, I started making meals on a Sunday because I knew the Monday to Friday was so busy with after school sports and everything else. So I never went out on a Sunday. Sunday, I was in my kitchen getting ready and prepared because my weeks were busy. So I'd make, the big shepherd's pie and and all these things and put them in the freezer. And that changed my life, because when I could, the evenings that I was staying at the university to work a bit later and think through and write some content and start to think about all these things, or even on the weekends, I was giving myself the most precious commodity of all, which was time. Nice. And we all know that lack of time is the reason that we fail. And I don't like that word, but it was the reason that women have all of these entrepreneurial ideas, but they've got obstacles in the way. So we have to figure out what the obstacles are, from all, not just the business obstacles, but the home obstacles. What is going on? My mother had a stroke. I was driving halfway down the North Island, once a month to see her. But it actually ended up well, because I put hubby in charge of the kids and said, I'm going, but I'd pack my laptop and use that time, to start preparing for my business. So that's what I say is, and get the right support. I've got a really supportive husband. He still works on the business. He does a lot of the analytical stuff. And so I needed, and I was having weekly meetings with my website developer. And I'm on my, for any of your listeners who have been following me for a while, I'm on my third version of my website. So don't think that you're making you're putting content on a website and it's going to be, there forever. You are constantly evolving.
Yeah. That's beautiful, because that led with You really took the question right out of my mouth, because my next question to you was, during that phase of setting up your business and, you know, experiencing menopause at that time, was what was what was the first job that you outsourced?
Mm,
So the housekeeper is very much, we need to think about how we think about our time holistically, not just our time that's business time. But
mm,
if we freed up, you know, tidying the house once a week, how much more time would we have for that?
mm,
So
mm,
I love that piece of advice, like housekeeper, or get someone to mow the lawns, or, you
mm.
know, drop the laundry off down at the laundromat once a week, or, whatever that is that will help
Yeah.
you, with your time wise.
But just coming back to that, Sandra, I've just thought of something else which may
Mm,
help your listeners. The other thing I did was I was feeling, really exhausted, and I was overweight, and I was struggling with sleep and hot flashes. And
mm,
so the other fundamental thing I did was have a chat, talk about it at dinner time. And I said to the kids, and they were, I don't know, 13, 14, 15, 15. When my daughter was 15, my son was 13. And I had always done everything. They're really active, sporty kids after school. They went home till after 5 o'clock and then be homework and da da da. So I decided that part of my role as a working mother was to actually say to them, right, one of you are cooking, you know, Matt, you're cooking on a Friday. I don't care if it's pizza, but you're learning to do that. And Georgia, you're going to cook on another night, or da da da. Because they were very busy kids, and we always had kids at our house, and blah blah blah. But
yeah.
that was also crucial. Was saying to
Mm,
them, come on, guys, you need to help me. I've done my bit for 25 years
yeah.
or whatever, for 20 years. It's your turn now. So let's all pitch in. And they did. And I think that we as women, we forget to have those conversations. We internalize so much.
Mm,
And yet it's so important to engage the family. That's what they are. They're family. So get them engaged in how you're feeling, what's going on in your life. It's not always about them,
mm,
and what help you need around the home.
yeah. And more hands make light work of, the home and the environment that we spend
Mm,
all our time in.
yeah.
How was your business growing over that time? So, what was the first job internally in your business you outsourced once your program was up and running? You had your website designer who was helping you build that platform on which you could put your content behind a paid wall. But
Mm-hmm.
how was that growing over time, and what does that look like today in terms of team?
I don't have a big team. My goal was always, I don't want lots of staff. I've
Mm,
been there, done that, and so but coming back to the coach, I had a business coach out of Australia, and she mentored me every week. We'd be on a phone call together, kept me accountable, came up with ideas. It's really great to discuss ideas. I mean, I don't know about the marketing world and an online business, and so she really helped me start to think about all that side of things. So that was
mm,
critical, was to put to find the money in the early days to pay for a coach. And then secondly, so she had people that she could plug into, if we had problems with the website, or if there was, the biggest thing was Facebook, was really understanding how do you get your word out there. And I
mm,
still very begrudgingly pay for Facebook, but you've got to have different you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. And so I still pay for Facebook ads, because the purpose of that is to get the symptoms quiz out there, so I can start a customer engaging with me on my website. So I pay for New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the UK and Ireland. I pay for Facebook ads, because remember my demographic is women 45 to 60 plus, and so Facebook is still relevant. I don't do TikTok. I don't do any of that. So Facebook, Instagram, and for me, it's emails. So I've got to have, we're delivering probably up to 2 million or more emails a year around the world. And I've got a huge database, which which still remain with me. So I work really hard to engage them, to have them on my newsletter. And now I've got the education practitioners as well. And in the early days, to be fair, I travelled around New Zealand, and I did public seminars. I did my masterclass on menopause, and I would hire the local school, auditorium, or team up with people I knew in that area who were exercise specialists or whatever, and use the universities. They were very generous in giving me a lecture theatre, use Facebook ads to get out there. And so that's how I also built my, presence and visibility. We can't just rely on the internet. It's very cluttered. I'm going to have a big focus on YouTube this year, because that's really expanding. I just sat in on a social media conference last week. Were you on that one, Sandra? Social media marketing conference. See, this is what people have got. You've got to do. I was supposed to go up to America, but then they rescheduled the conference, because I do like to go to a conference which is about helping me understand some of the areas that we need to be involved in when we're trying to work online. So that's what I do, and that gives me ideas. It puts me with all these young things that who know a lot more about it than I do. It's really, really challenging. And honestly, I do pull my hair out with Facebook, but it's, at the moment, it's a necessary evil. And then I'm going back to doing some seminars and things. COVID was very big for me, and I didn't realize it at the time. But what it did, certainly from my perspective on being online, it put women online. It put women in front of their computers at home when they were a lot less stressed, and enabled me to engage them. And it also made me put my masterclass online. Remember, I was traveling around New Zealand and Australia doing my 2-hour masterclass, and doing local Facebook advertising to get women in a room. And I could get 200 or 300 women in a room 10 years ago. And so what I did was, with COVID, and as your listeners will know, New Zealand had very strict lockdown requirements. But I thought, oh my God, what do I do? I had 5 live events that I had to cancel, and women had paid for a ticket. So hubby had the bright idea to order, within about 3 days of lockdown, I had ordered my very first microphone. And because I wasn't doing that online, and I thought, I need to put this online. I need to do this masterclass for all the women who've bought a ticket. And there were hundreds between New Zealand and Australia. And doing that gave me the confidence that then I had this recording, and I could then put it online and start to get it out there. So all these, you never think about these things, but
Yeah.
when these things happen, it's such a great time to kind of go, okay, what do I have to do now? I've got to change my whole thinking. And that was fantastic in a way.
I'd love to talk about that piece. And you were obviously starting your business with a local presence in New Zealand and then across the ditch into Australia.
Mm.
The global audience that you now have, was that as a result of COVID when you went online?
Mm.
Um, and was that the point that you started thinking a bit wider than just what was on your back doorstep?
Yes and no. I'd always wanted, we're so far away from everything in New Zealand that I'd always thought, how do I sell my knowledge to the world? Because I just remember my head was in my PhD. I
Mm,
knew the numbers. I knew that our generation, the last of the baby boomers, women born up to 1964, the numbers were phenomenal. And the numbers were in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Ireland. Those are the 4 countries that per capita population have got the highest demographic of women who are now in their early 60s. And of course, 10 years ago, they were in their 50s. So I knew that I needed to target some of those countries. And I didn't even know what SEO stood for. Didn't even have a clue. Wouldn't have had a clue. I just knew that I had to rely on my web developer to help me, sort out the website so that it was so it could be found. And because I had a business coach who was experienced in that area, she understood how to find the key search terms that women were looking for. Now my SEO is really, really important. And even now I've got a post-menopause program. We're now starting to, my SEO lady is in the North Island, and she's been fantastic. But I didn't always have her. I had one in Australia, and they changed some personnel and stuff. So the key things, you have to work with someone who understands that you need to be searchable and how to find those keywords. And that's been evolving for a number of years now, that I can write an article for my blog, and I might flick an email to my search engine optimizer, and I'll say, I want to write a blog about liver health and menopause. What are women searching for? What terms are key terms are women searching for? And so you can look and you can see what questions they're asking. So she'll send me back, these are the search terms. Get those in your article. Get those in your title. And that's all I know. She does everything else. So I only want to know what I need to know, and that is that I'm writing content, I'm delivering content. So how do I need to think about marketing? With this big world of technology now. So those are the sort of basic things. I'm still very, very basic when it comes to understanding all this, but I know enough to know that if women have a problem, why is my blood pressure high in menopause?
Yeah.
And I know I've got a blog about that, about high blood pressure. That's the terms I need to use. They're not going to type in hypertension, in menopause or whatever. Yeah. So that can be quite problematic. So I think, so I think whether your clients and your listeners are online or not, what messages are you trying to get across? What is the customer journey once they do know about you? Even preceding that, how do they know about you? What are you going to do? Are you a local business? So therefore you do need to have a local presence, and or are you a global business like me? So therefore you've got to spend some money to make some money. And so you've got to be, doing Facebook and YouTube. And we haven't done YouTube ads, but we're looking at that this year.
Right.
And certainly, we have a very, very good email, data collection and email distribution. And then we're collecting enough data to know the main problems that women are experiencing. And they're not hot flushes or hot flashes, because they're all going on HRT. The number one issue, I've got over 500,000 women around the world who've done my symptoms quiz. The number one issue, there are two main issues that over 85% of them say. Number one, they're exhausted. Fatigue is the number one issue. And number two is sore joints.
Yes.
Yes.
I relate to both of those. I relate to both of those.
You need my
I mean, I
button.
literally just put into the search engine earlier this week, why do my bones feel heavy?
Yeah. That's a good
So,
one.
very relatable in terms of, what you're feeling,
Yes.
which is different from a diagnosis, because
Yes, that's right.
and now all of these, not only search engines, but now we got AI that we can have a conversation with about, why do I feel like I do,
Yeah. But Sandra, that isn't the issue for me. I mean, yes, it is, because you're a female businesswoman experiencing symptoms. Okay, so that's one issue. The other issue is you're doing what, I mean, I want to sell you my program, but you're on Dr. Google figuring it out. And I get really annoyed about everyone putting their answers on YouTube. Not on YouTube, but on the internet. Don't put your answers on the internet. Don't tell. Why do entrepreneurs want you as their business coach if you're giving them all the answers all the time? And it is the one thing that I'm always telling my practitioners who are setting up their business. I have, hundreds and hundreds of practitioners who want to get into this menopause space with coaching. And I say, don't give everything away for free. We're running a business. We are running a business. And so I give away enough to hopefully help women understand that I'm knowledgeable. I know my stuff. I've got a PhD in this stuff. And now when you look at perimenopause and menopause, there's someone who's suddenly an expert within 3 days, or a personal trainer who's an expert because she might have 3 or 4 perimenopausal clients. So, but she doesn't have the knowledge that I have. And so we're all up against competition. And there's a lot I disagree with some of the narrative that's going on in the world around how to manage menopause symptoms. We don't all need to fast. In fact, if you're exercising, you should just be doing overnight fasting, and that's it. You shouldn't be going for hours. And if you're in a leadership role, your brain is using up 30% of your energy. No wonder you've got brain fog and memory problems if you're not fueling it with food. So there's instant experts on social media and on, Dr. Google. But so you have to think about, well, where am I putting my peg in the sand, my stick in the sand? And I think that's really important for female entrepreneurs, especially coaches like me who are in a specific, space, because my stick in the sand is always, I am not fitness or just dieting or fasting. I'm not heavyweight training and high protein diets, because they ruin your kidneys. Believe me, after 30 years of looking at bodybuilders, I know exactly the health problems that they have. I am women's health and I am evidenced. So, the Mediterranean diet, all those sorts of things. So I'm very, what's really important to me is women's weight loss. If they don't manage their weight, they'll head into cardiovascular problems. It is the number one health concern for postmenopausal women. So my stick in the sand is women's health. I look at menopause through the lens of women's healthy aging. And cardiovascular disease is the number one thing that all women in the world have to be concerned about, because it is the one thing that is ahead of breast cancer and osteoporosis and all these other things that get talked about.
Wow.
So I'm very clear when women come into my programs, I'm taking them on a journey of improving, definitely getting rid of their symptoms. If they're on my weight loss program, definitely, helping them lose weight, but stepping them into those post-menopause years, because they're going to be 55. If they're 45 now, they're going to be 55 in no time at all. So I think that your listeners, you have to really think about, well, I can't be everything. I can't agree with everything. Who am I? What am I? And, just stay in your lane, and let everyone, chatter on about other things that you might disagree with. But I know through all the years that I have been in the fitness industry, that I did set up personal training for the largest fitness club in the world. I know that with women, they need support, and certainly community matters. And so I set up a private Facebook group, and I've got 2,500 women in there at the moment, and from all around the world. And so it was really important for me that I had this community that could engage with me, because I know that if women do well, then word of mouth is really, really important from that aspect.
Yeah, that's very, word of mouth is still the number one form of marketing. If you can do a fantastic job at serving your people, the word of mouth is going to be your number one seller, because somebody else is selling it for you. So I agree totally. Just as we come in and land this up, I'm interested to know what your vision is for my menopause transformation in the next 5 years. Anyone just needs to go to your website and see the amount of work and the amount of transformation and the impact that you're having on women who are going through this menopausal stage of life. So I'm interested to know what does the next 5 years look like for you?
Well, the next 5 years is actually about my aging. I'm in my 60s now, and so I've just developed a Beyond Menopause program, and women who have been with me for 10 years, we're all aging together. So I've spent a lot of time over the last year really getting my head into the research on longevity specific to women, not men. Not that I don't care about the men, but this is the game I'm in. This is the gig I'm in. I present a lot at conferences last year, and really started to broaden myself, kind of not away from menopause, but stepping into the next phase of life that women are entering into. So that's number one. I'll be coming out with even more programs for postmenopausal women. Hopefully, touch wood, we're all living for another 30 years. So that's really important for women to understand that. I've got an education practitioner programs now, so I'll be developing that more into a broadening of women's health. And one of the proudest things is that my daughter lives in London. She used to be, she's got an economics degree, and has worked in corporate Auckland for 8 years, went to London, said, I don't want to do corporate anymore. And I went, great, I need you. So she runs all the education side of things for me, and that's been huge, helping her understand what goes on behind the scenes. I'm content, I do all the live Zoom calls. So I've got and these courses are all certified, because I know how to get courses certified because of everything I've done in the education area here in New Zealand. So I've been teaching her, and we've got, if you look under the practitioner link, I've got a health coach course, understanding the science and psychology of menopause, just a little 3-week one, but it's certified with a lot of organizations around the world. And I've got I wanted to do a weight loss one for personal trainers, and because a lot of trainers here in New Zealand know me and they know my background. So I've got a 6-week weight loss coach course, which again is certified and registered. And then I've got my 12-week practitioner course. But so now working with practitioners, with naturopaths, nutritionists, doctors, I have quite a few lifestyle medicine doctors who come on those courses, counselors, therapists. So I'm going to keep broadening product, and the more product you've got at different price points, the more you'll be selling. I mean, I've got a $99 product, and then I've got my US $2,000 product. So that's really important to me, is to keep understanding what is it that I can help practitioners with to do their job in a way that they can trust the research I'm doing and the information I'm giving them, and sell resources to them, because they're seeing women. If you're a counselor or a therapist, you're seeing women, and your expertise is in stress management and anxiety and all these things, whereas my expertise is in, what does this woman eat? What does she need to do, with her exercise, all those sorts of things. So, and how can she sleep better? So, so that's what I'll be doing. And coming up with new products. Endometriosis is a big issue these days, especially for our generation. I'm starting to see that data come through. We need more information out there for that. And I'll be, my daughter is doing some retraining, so I'll segue her into it as well. But I think the exciting thing for me, Sandra, is that I have a plan in my head about where I want to be in 5 or 10 years' time. And what's exciting is that when you do have an online presence, when you are coaching, it just is evolving. It's yes, I've got to start understanding, chat GPT and AI and all these things. But, I know now that I don't need to know everything. And if you can just get the right people on board with you, who understand your business, who understand the demographic that you're working with, then it'll all just evolve. I never thought, I'm selling into 55 countries around the world at the moment, and I love it. I get so excited. I've just had some programs sold and practitioner courses sold into Kazakhstan. I've got 5 practitioners from Kazakhstan on my practitioner course, and I'm going, holy moly, this is so exciting. Thank God for their English. I've got a nurse, a clinical nurse specialist from the Bahamas, Agnes, and she's lots of fun and on my practitioner course. And I'm saying, Agnes, tell me a little bit about, what's going on in menopause in the Bahamas. And she goes, honey, there is no HRT. And I said, what do you mean? She said, no, our culture is such that we don't have HRT. There is no prescription of HRT. How fascinating is that? So I'll have to go to the Bahamas and do a presentation, I think. Do my masterclass in the Bahamas. So who knows? Who knows what's ahead of us? But find ways to stay motivated. connected, and you'll never know where your business will take you.
Agreed. That's fabulous. So, one final question for you. Is there one message you'd love to give every woman in business that they could take away from this session about menopause and thriving through it while still having a thriving business?
Knowledge.
Nice.
Learn about it. It is set in the biomedical paradigm. You're being told that you've got, it's almost like you've got a disease. Menopause is not a disease. It's a stage of life we all go through. So I'd say to women, please stop using the word menopause. It's inflammation. And what's causing that inflammation is your stress, is your lack of sleep, is the food you're eating, and the exercise that you aren't or are doing too much of. And so just realize that this is it's not just about the hormones, it's the fact that you're stepping into your aging. Remember, women over the age of 50 are older women. Inside, you are aging. So that's really, really, really important. So, to me, at the end of the day, what am I? I'm a women's educator and health educator. And so education is really important. Do the masterclass, get the support that you need right now. I'm all for HRT, but I'm also saying if stress is a big thing for you, then there's your answer. If you're not sleeping, there's your answer. Your hot flashes are coming because you're not sleeping, because your circadian rhythm is out of balance. All of those things are really, really important. So that's crucial.
Love that piece of advice. That is golden. Wendy, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. There is probably a whole lot more questions I would love to ask and probably could go on for at least another hour. But I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. It is definitely an interesting time in business. Now, as we experience, the internet and more AI coming into our business, but also an interesting time when you are, experiencing menopause and changing in the way that you function and how we need to embrace that. And make changes in our own personal life in order to make our businesses thrive at the same time. It doesn't have to be an either or, it can be an and. So your information has been absolutely incredible around all things business at this stage of life. So I thank you so much for being here.
Good. Thank you, Sandra. And to your listeners, just enjoy. You're in the prime of your career. If you're 45 years and older, you're in the prime of your career. So don't lose sight of the knowledge and the wisdom that you have and the experience that you have that others around the world need. So just stay focused on that. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Wendy, I'm going to drop the link to your quiz into the show notes because I think that would be super helpful as a starting point to understand what's going on with our bodies, where we're at in the change, this stage of our life. I think that would be super valuable, and then they can soak up everything else that you've got to offer. So I will do that when we publish the episode as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.